Hey guys, welcome back to Jess and Reid's Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm going to be talking about my romance reading journey that has spanned, I don't know, almost 15 years now. And I was thinking about all of the books that I used to read, what I considered like the best types of romance and how that has evolved. I've said in a previous video that my reading tastes have changed vastly in the past 5 years. Juliet Cross, my podcast co-host and also my aunt, and I were talking about how what was once satisfactory to us and what we looked for in a romance is no longer what we look for now. And so I thought it would be a fun idea to tell you what books I started reading and how that kind of shaped me as a romance reader and what I read now and how that is just so different to how I choose romances now. So like many romance readers of my generation, I started reading around the time whenever I was in late junior high and high school. It's also the time that the Twilight craze started to happen, and of course I read those. I also read Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead, which I loved, and the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. So obviously I was in this paranormal sector of YA romance that I was really enjoying, and I was actually kind of a snob about preferring paranormal and fantasy romance over contemporaries. To me, contemporary romance was Nora Roberts and stuff my mom read, and I was just like, but like this is like on another level, and my romance tastes are like so much better than yours, Mom. So anyway, I was quite a snob, and I only wanted to read those types of romance. One of the first fantasy romances that I was introduced to is actually because of Juliet Cross, my aunt. She introduced me to Wolfskin by Juliet Marillier. And these books are pretty light on the romance and heavy on mythology. In this particular book, there's lots of Celtic and Norse mythology that go hand in hand, and it's still really great. Like whenever I look at this book, and I just like get all the feels because I love this couple. This was such a good book, and it's not only a romance, it's a tale about friendship and just, you know, it's just amazing and I love it. And so of course I had to go devour the rest of her books. I read the second book in that series, and then The Dark Mirror. Juliet Marillier is heavily influenced by Celtic mythology, and this one has some druid action in there. I really love this. This is like a childhood romance. The hero is actually like 4 years old when we first meet him, and the heroine is a baby that he rescues. And so the journey between them is very long and hard fought. So since this is a childhood romance and we follow them as they grow into adulthood and their feelings change for each other, they're torn apart, it's a slow burn. And you'll see a common theme with the books that I started my reading journey with. They are all slow burns. They're all very minimal on the time that the characters actually spend together, and they kind of veer on the more angsty side, which is really funny because, as you know, that's changed recently. So the next book, which I still have a extreme soft spot, this book will always be on one of my favorites list. I just love it so much. I think the story is super just beautiful and gorgeous. This heroine is awesome and this hero is amazing. I love Reid. So this is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier, and as you can see, this cover is completely off because I've read it so many times. I got this brand new and it is damaged. This is just for me reading it all the time, reading in the bath. I used to have a bad habit of reading paperbacks in the bath. I don't do that anymore, but I do have another copy, but I was not getting rid of my original one. Like, this is prime Jessin started romance reading. This has so many memories. I couldn't get rid of my original copy. So anyway, those are the Juliet Marilliers that I was introduced to. And then I discovered Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series, and I really loved this. This was more modern for me, but it still had those elements that I really liked. I liked the mythology elements, and this has Greek mythology, except it's set in present day. It's this like urban fantasy series that follows warriors in Greek mythology, and their leader is Acheron. And yeah, so I really enjoyed this series. I have pretty much all the books except I believe this series is still running, and I stopped reading this a couple years ago. So that was the next one, and this is like high fantasy. This is Sarah Douglas's Wayfarer Redemption series. Juliet and I were obsessed with this series. We loved it. This was super angsty, super slow burn. The hero and the heroine actually end up with different people by the end of the series, and I was just like, ugh! It like killed me while I was reading the series. I used to read very angsty romances. Like I was all up in that. And yeah, I reread that series a lot. But then Becca to the rescue. So Juliet Cross started this book club on Facebook, and we were called the Moonlight Maidens, and it was me, Juliet, Rebecca, and Rachel. And Rebecca was the one who introduced me to Julia Quinn. Juliet Quinn was the first historical romance author that I've read, even though by this time I had read the Dark Fever series and the Highlanders. The Highlanders are historical, but they're historical fantasy. This is the first straight up historical romance that I've ever read, and I did start from the beginning, so I did read The Duke and I, but I wanted to bring out An Offer from a Gentleman because I feel like Benedict does not get as much love as the other Bridgertons, and I really love this one. This one is a Cinderella retelling. I really enjoyed the family aspect of the Bridgertons, and this was the first book I really read that had such like lightness and humor in it, and I was like, man, I really enjoy this. Going from the angst and the slow burn that I was used to, and coming to this, I was just like, I like humor in my romances? Who knew? And then Juliet Cross discovered Stephanie Lawrence. I love Stephanie Lawrence. Devil's Bride was so good. I love the series. We reviewed a couple of them on the podcast. So I was delving into the historical romance aspect of things, and I did tend to gravitate to the historical romances that had like lots of like good humor and stuff. I was pretty set in the authors that I was introduced to and just reading all of their backlist. So I didn't have a lot of variety at the time. But at this point, I'm still not into straight up contemporary, and I discover Nalini Singh. So the first book that I discovered by Nalini Singh was Angel's Blood. This is her Guild Hunter series, and it has angels, and this is urban fantasy with angels are ruling Earth. Basically, they all have sectors around the Earth that they're in charge of, and Elena is this vampire hunter. She's actually called a guild hunter, but their job is to hunt down escaped vampires who are like the minions of angels. And Elena is tasked by the Archangel of New York, Raphael, for a very secret mission that could probably get her killed. I love this. To this day, I still read this book all of the time. It is damaged, and I love it. So as far as I can tell, as soon as I discovered Nalini Singh, this is where my romance journey starts to take like a turn, a curve. And this was about, I don't know, 2010-ish that I started discovering, and I was really into her writing style. So of course I had to go in her backlist, and I discovered the Psy-Changeling series. The Psy-Changeling series is my favorite shifter series of all time. Not only is it really well written and the characters are amazing and the series is still going strong and I'm still interested in it, but of course it's the first one that I ever read, so it definitely holds a special place in my heart. Nalini Singh is an auto-buy author to me. If she has a new book coming out, I'm just like, yes, of course, I love it. And if you notice, I did get the UK covers for this series because look how hot he is, okay? All the covers have the heroes on them with these like scars, and the first one's Lucas, and he actually has these scars on his cheeks, which I thought was really cool. But then it became kind of a theme for the rest of the covers to also have something similar. And guys, I'm like counting down the days until the paperback version of Alpha Knight is available because it is amazing, and I want them all in paperback because that's what I have. I like my series to look cohesive now. I look at my YA collection and I see so many paperback plus hardcover, and I'm just like, I don't like it. Anyway, now I have to give a shout out to Juliet Cross, my aunt, my co-host, and the person who recommends me all these wonderful books, okay? She started my romance reading journey whenever I told her I was interested in reading, and she introduced me to Juliet Marillier. And then she was the first one to introduce me to contemporary romance that I actually enjoyed. And you know, if I would have tried contemporary romance earlier, I probably would have enjoyed it too, but it was just like I needed that push into contemporary, be like, go try it. And I still at this time was like, I don't know if I could read straight up contemporary. So the first real true contemporary that I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And it changed the way that I looked at contemporary romance. I really enjoyed the banter between Lucy and Josh, and I liked the enemies to lovers trope. It's always kind of been one of my favorites, and I just hadn't looked that hard at it. But I loved the level of romance on this one and the back and forth, the push and pull, and it made me think, oh my God, why did I put off reading contemporary romance for so long? So as you can tell, I just started reading contemporary romance very recently. And the next book that I picked up was The Kiss Quotient. This just changed everything for me, okay? I loved it. And you can see in my romance reading journey that we're taking an even greater turn because I wanted my romances that had like lots of sexy times. Nalini Singh was the first series that I ever read that had like more explicit sex scenes in it, and I really enjoyed like the passion and the chemistry like really being put on there on the page. And then The Kiss Quotient came and I was like, oh wait, so the contemporaries have this level too? Like, I'm loving it. I'm really, really, really loving it. So then I started searching. I signed up for the BookBub newsletter so that I'd be notified on the free and discounted books that would happen every single day. And that's how I discovered this next author. And we've reviewed tons of her books on the podcast because I love her brand of humor. And the types of characters that she writes, she just kind of blows my mind. I discovered Penny Reid through BookBub. There's BookBub for Truth or Beard, and I was like, what is this? The cover really drew me in because I was like, I'd never seen a cover like this before. But the real draw was the bearded man, okay? So I'm obsessed with guys with beards and tattoos, and so of course I was like, yeah, what is this? What is this? Let me go look at this. And this is probably where I get my love of small town romances. I was coming off of lots of billionaire romances that I had been reading, and it was the trend after 50 Shades of Grey was not only the BDSM thing, but to have billionaire heroes who were like so powerful, the CEOs, and that was a big trend, and I was getting tired of reading those, and I still don't gravitate towards billionaires to this day because of that, because I'd read so many that had that type of romance where the guy was super rich and the woman was struggling, and I was like, okay, I want something different. So when Penny Reid came along and I was introduced to the Winston brothers, these men who lived in backwoods Tennessee, small town, who were mechanics, and one used to be in a motorcycle group, but he's now a park ranger. Like, they had these just blue collar jobs that I was really enjoying, and I was like, yeah, real people. I love this. The setting was just as much a draw for me as the characters were. And you know, the rest is history. I love Penny Reid. I love her Winston Brothers series. It's probably my favorite series by her by far, and her Knitting in the City series is also great. I have my favorites. I did forget to mention that I went through like a motorcycle club phase, but it wasn't just motorcycles, it was also like tattoos, and I loved Laura Kay's Heart Ink series, and I did read Kristen Ashley's Dream Man series. It's not my favorite. I know it's going to break a lot of you guys' hearts, but the only book I really like in that series is Lawman. So all of the MC, billionaires, the BDSM, the erotica, all of that preceded me discovering rom-com contemporary romance. And I still love rom-coms. Rom-coms are just this light and airy breath of fresh air. When you find that author that has that sense of humor that just meshes well, it's a match made in heaven. And I'm so thankful that I was steered into the contemporary romance scene just for that. But even though I was stuck in the more rom-com-y area of things for a long time, I started getting into the more heart-wrenching, a little bit angsty. I'm like middle of the road angst. I'm not full on. I don't want something that will like really and truly tear me apart and break my heart and make me hate the characters, but then they end up by getting together at the end. Like, I don't want that type of angst. The angst that makes me not like the journey. I need to like the journey at least most of the time. But anyway, I was lucky enough to discover Kennedy Ryan around the time that Blockshot was coming out. There was promotion being done on Twitter, and that's how I discovered Kennedy Ryan. It was in the months leading up to Blockshot, and I kept seeing this, and I was like, yeah, sports romance is something that I started to dabble in and look into. I really like sports romances, and I saw Blockshot. I immediately went and bought the first book in the series, Longshot. And I just did the whole spiel about angst. This does have angst. It has trigger warnings galore. Definitely don't read Longshot if you are triggered by any forms of sexual or physical abuse, emotional abuse. It's very heavy, but it's one of the greatest romances I've ever read. And that solidified me being Kennedy Ryan's biggest fangirl. I loved her. What's really funny is that by the time I was consciously discovering Kennedy Ryan with Longshot and Blockshot, I hadn't even realized that I think through BookBub I had already owned her ebook of Float and Grip, and I had just put it aside in my little collection of TBR that I just wasn't ready to read yet. After I read Longshot and Blockshot, I was so amazed, and I was like telling everyone like, this author's amazing. And everyone was like, well, have you read her Grip series, her Grip series, her Grip series? And I was like, you know, I've seen that one around. I've seen those book covers, those pretty purple book covers. And I like didn't want to read it because it was so hyped. And I know a lot of people who are like this, that the more they see a book and the more they see people say this is like the greatest romance of all time and everyone should read this book, the more reluctant they are to read the book. And that's how I was with Grip and Flow. And this is an instance where the hype, to me, it was worth it. It was true. I was kicking myself. By the time I finished the Grip series, I was like, girl, why did it take you so long to read this series? These books are like just my favorite of all time. I love them. I don't know if anything can really unseat them. Grip and Bristol are my all-time favorite couple. I love them. I can't, they're my babies. They're my babies. By the way, did you know that Kennedy Ryan is getting new book covers for this series? So if you want the original covers, you need to order them now before they are switched for the new ones. I'm so excited. I want the book box with the new covers on there. I actually have a couple copies of the original covers for giveaways in the future. So I'm gonna hang on to the original ones now that new covers are being drawn up. I'm excited to see what she comes out with. So a lot of the contemporary authors that I really love have been featured on the podcast, like Vi Keelan and Penelope Ward. Carrie Cole is an independent author that I really love. Mariana Zapata. I love Mariana Zapata, and she's probably one of the only authors, contemporary authors that I read right now that I enjoy the slow burn, because like I said, if we look at the beginning of my journey, I was into paranormal romances. I liked the romance aspect of it, but most of what I was reading was long-running series, kind of like Kate Daniels, which I actually discovered later, that the romance wasn't apparent in the first few books. And it took a while for the hero and the heroine to actually get on each other's radar, and an even longer time for them to get together. Those are the types of books that I used to gravitate towards. I liked the long game. I didn't mind waiting so much, but now I'm impatient, and I like romances that I'm going to get like some immediate satisfaction with. That's what I love. That's why I gravitate towards people like Kennedy Ryan, Talia Hibbert, who can do it all. She can do the comedy, she can do the intense physical and emotional attraction. Like, the chemistry between Kennedy Ryan's and Talia Hibbert's characters are unparalleled to me. Rebecca Weatherspoon is another person. If you haven't read Zinni or Rafe, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Love it. So anyway, contemporary romance is where I'm at. That doesn't mean that I don't like reading paranormal or urban fantasy, because as we all know, Hidden Legacy series by Alona Andrews is one of my favorite series of all times. So is Kate Daniels. I love Kate Daniels. I'm always hesitant to recommend Kate Daniels to people because the romance starts so late in the game. And they have said themselves on their blog that they would rewrite the first 2 books in that series, especially the first one. I was so confused reading the first Kate Daniels that I was just like, I don't even know if I want to move on to the second one. So I always encourage people, if they're really looking for some more urban fantasy romances and they haven't read Kate Daniels, I will recommend it. But I'm like, you have to stick it out until book 3. Book 3 is where it happens, okay? The magic happens. And also the spinoff is coming very soon, Blood Heir. I just saw the release date somewhere in like January 2021. Super excited about that. I can't wait. So that was my reading journey and how it's changed. How I went from slow burns, angsty, only staying in the paranormal and urban fantasy lane to going to contemporary rom-coms with a lot more explicit sex scenes in them. And like, I want that. I don't want Fade to Black. Fade to Black is like, I need to be warned. If it's Fade to Black, then I won't read it. Like, seriously, I don't care how good it is. I'm just like, there's so many other books that I need to read. And this is just one of the criteria that I've like set. If it's Fade to Black, I don't want it. Thanks, but no thanks. So let me know in the comments, what was your reading journey like? Have you been consistent? Have you always been a historical romance reader? Have you been reading Lisa Kleypas for years? I've only been reading Lisa Kleypas for the past like 6 years. And I know that people have been fans of hers and Julia Quinn and Stephanie Lawrence for like years and years and years. Lorraine Heath is another historical romance author that I recently discovered. I say recent, but then I looked at my old Goodreads page and I read one of her books like years ago. And I don't even remember it. I reread it recently and I was like, I don't remember ever reading this book. But anyway, let me know what your romance reading journey was like. Has it changed? Have you evolved? What are some of the criteria that you look for today? And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit the like button on this video and subscribe. You'll be notified on all my future videos. I'm really excited about the ones that are coming up in the future. I'm going to go through each subgenre of romance that I believe I have, you know, clear favorites in, and sharing with you guys what are my favorites in those genres. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.